What's going on, Browns fans? Welcome back to the Cleveland Pulse YouTube channel. I am your host, Justin Harold, and with me, as always, my co-host, Jeff Santa. Today, we are bringing you the end of the Browns 2023-2024 season. It was a very young 2024 season, but obviously the postseason was yesterday. Your Brownies lost 45-14 against the Houston Texans at Houston in what was not an entirely overwhelming defeat in the first half, but unlike our predictions with the scores, I was very much right about one thing, and it was Joe Flacco throwing the worst timely interceptions at the third quarter of the game. So unfortunately, both of them go for pick sixes and put the game in a position where we have to throw and they get the run, and it just ends up being what it ends up being. I think a lot of it can be boiled down to a lot of our issues in the regular season finally catching up to us. Again, the playoffs are a higher level of competition no matter what team you get. And obviously with the Texans, there's a lot to talk about with them. They have a very bright future, and that first matchup that we got of them was not indicative of what we got of them this week. Obviously, they were highly prepared. They didn't have CJ Stroud the first time. We're missing a defensive end or two the last time we played them. But just yesterday, I think Kevin put it pretty perfectly, and a lot of people put it just like this. It was a bad day to have our bad day. So I think there's a little bit more that goes into it, but I do think I can at least let that sentiment sit with myself and at least take some of it and know that it is a little bit true. But Jeff, I know that we didn't really talk too much after the game yesterday. It was one of those things of we wanted to know where we felt our feelings were and how we were going to be able to react to it. And I think we were both in the moment of a 45-14 playoff loss. I think we were both not in great mind spaces for this, but now I think we've had a day to sleep on it and think on it and see reactions, see news come out of one another. But Jeff, how are you doing, and what are your thoughts?
I mean, I think this just kind of shows you the I don't even I'm going to call it growing pains, but I don't even really think that's appropriate because it just is getting old at this point. I think will be the sentiment from some of the fan base. I mean, we just have not been able to have postseason, success, let alone regular season success, as far as outside of a few players. And I think that, talking about the past really isn't going to make this feel any better, but we've just really learned how to be successful in the regular season. And I know that 2020 absolutely should be the standard because you win a playoff game there. I don't really care about the weird circumstances. We've kind of set this goal that, yeah, regular season, cool, fun and all. We're expected to be competitive in those, section of games. And then on the road, at home, regardless what the postseason kind of setup is. I mean, you're the literal favorites in this game yesterday. So either way, embarrassing. Either way, is the experience good? Yeah, but I'm not going to sit here and say that that was a good outcome, obviously, to the season. The regular season being its own body of work, stuff to talk about, stuff to build on, players that you're going to be able to extend, and players you probably feel like you got a good look at. But just absolute disaster yesterday. So we got to move on.
I mean, Jeff, you hit it right on the nail, right on the head there. I don't think there's any player that you can really talk about on the Browns side, except for one. And even then, as much as he tried and, what he did, JOK just, he's one player. He might have had a great game, but he's one of those players that I think will get extended this offseason. I think that's probably a must with the linebacker room as it is. And AWOC continuously just being injury prone and us not having, a number one guy there. So I think JOK is going to be one of the first guys lined up for an extension. But the other guy that was drafted with him and actually drafted before him in that draft, Greg Newsome, who had probably the worst day of any player, I think, yesterday, was the one who got basically abused following Nico Collins around. I haven't really seen the explanation for that yet. I might have to do some digging, and hopefully I can find that later on this week. Sports. But I feel like that was an interesting game plan on the defensive side of the ball. I don't know really why that was an idea, because Greg's always been the slot guy. He's never been a follow to the outside type of guy. And I really feel like for some reason that turned into the game plan. And maybe here's the awful part that I just thought about with that. Maybe the knee injury for Denzel made him feel like he couldn't keep up with Collins. And that's why they had Greg following. I mean, that's the first time, because even Denzel doesn't follow, Jeff. I mean, we
haven't shadowed ever. Even in the Woods era, we didn't shadow, I don't think.
Yeah, so that's one of those, like, we can't just all be like, we've had a bad day, because it's definitely not just we had a bad day. I think we were outplayed and outcoached a little bit, but like, I don't know that, even if our offense can do a little bit better, like, I just feel like they had an answer for everything we were doing on defense, except for in the, but even in the red zone, they still got in after the first half. So it's a tough one to look at defensively. And again, offensively, there's really nothing for this game to talk about, I think, in terms of the actual game itself.
Even like the first half, though, like you talked about in your opening, like it was 17-14 and a half. And like we had an opportunity, even though they were getting the ball out of halftime, we all could agree that I think it was an uphill battle for us to stop them, but like it wasn't impossible. Like they scored 2 touchdowns, basically really kind of unbothered, with bigger plays. It's not like they kind of walked down the field on us and scored. It was more just we couldn't really figure it out on the back end. And they had another big play that was broken that didn't go for a touchdown. Nico Collins was wide open, but you had the defensive ability, I think, where that we held them to a field goal, and it was 17-14. But after the interceptions, you're not going to win giving up 14 points. When the opposing defense scores 14 points against you, you're really not going to win. But I still feel like the defense had that opportunity coming out of halftime, Justin, where they could have put together like even an average or a little bit below average second half defensively. And if we would have been able to move the ball, we could have won this game, and we would have been like, oh, the defense, would have played well enough in their spots, had their moments to win the game. But the first half, I'm not saying it was great, because when you give up 17 points and a half, it's obviously not going to be, something to write home about, but it was still an opportunity to be like, all right, we're in that bend, don't break mentality, but the offense kind of just threw it away.
Yeah. And again, a lot of that, CJ Stroud, 16 of 21 for 3 touchdowns and 274 yards. I mean, that's just alone like mind-boggling to me, because again, even their run game, it wasn't anything crazy, and then it didn't have to be as soon as they got that lead in the third and everything. But I felt in that first half, I felt like it was going to be a shootout, and I was actually very worried that had it gone tick for tack, it would just be one of those games where we would just never find our feet on defense. And I can't tell you what for me, I personally do not know what the Jim Schwartz plan was with the wide receivers, because I was of the mind that our cornerbacks were better than and I said it in the pregame. I was full believer that we have the best cornerback group in the league. And yesterday they got abused. And there wasn't a lot of pressure. I mean, Miles didn't get to him. No one really got to him. And the stupid jump pass, I can't believe he made those work. It irritates the hell out of me. But I
mean, what you saw there though is, and this is where I think Stroud is a little bit different, is that you could tell their offensive coordinator was like, all right, 90% of the plays, this is what it felt like to me. 90% of the plays we're not going to lose to the pressure. And it's one thing saying that, you could say that, and that could be your game plan as the offensive coordinator, but we know a lot of quarterbacks in this league can't execute that. Mm-hmm. Stroud absolutely did. And then the other 10% of plays, we're going to dial up these deep passes where we get Stroud on the move, and they all worked. Every single one of them worked
Yeah.
except for the play to Nico Collins. And honestly, from being two guys who watched Stroud play college football, the best thing that
He's never looked this good in college.
the thing that we complained about with him in college is that he didn't use his feet enough. It was probably the most beneficial thing he could have ever done for his career and for his life, because honestly, his rolling out to the pocket, when they rolled the pocket out and then went to the other side of the field, when they showed the top down back angle view, the defense just never had a chance.
He's just been spectacular. And he was like, outside of JT Barrett in like the last decade of quarterbacks for Ohio State, he really hasn't, outside of McCord now too, but he really hasn't impressed, or he didn't really impress me with his time here. We had Fields before him, and I was a huge Fields guy, but
he just didn't win the games that you wanted to win. I mean,
right.
he was impressive to me, but yeah, I didn't know if he would translate to the NFL, but absolutely, I've been totally wrong about that.
Jeff, a point that you brought up there about their team was that the offensive coordinator seemed like they had a really great game plan, schemed up and everything for Stroud coming back into this game. Let me ask you, with Alex Van Pelt, is there a chance that we get a Joe Woods this year with him? A Joe Woods firing type scenario?
I don't think so, because he doesn't do anything. He doesn't do enough for me to care. Like the broadcast is like, oh, Stefanski calls the plays for this team, and he's the quarterback coach, whatever. But nah, he's not.
Yeah.
If he wants to be there, he'll be there. I'll say that. Like if he comes to Stefanski's like, I don't really want to do this anymore. If Stefanski goes to him and is like, do you think this is kind of working out for the best? That's the only way. I don't think it's going to come from a firing. I mean, you get the disguise of injuries this year, and I'm not saying that to be negative.
Yeah.
Like the injuries were a thing. No one is discounting that. Like you're the best running back in the league gets hurt. The quarterback who you just expected to basically be healthy all year for the most part gets hurt. So yeah, I mean, this front office is going to play it off like, not that we shouldn't have been here, because they're always going to want to reset that standard of, okay, playoffs, get in, make noise, like we did in 2020. But at the end of the day, it's not like the strategy moving forward, and we'll have plenty of time to talk about it. But for me, the strategy is not, get healthy and go from there. Like there's a lot that has to be done this offseason, as is every offseason. And we know that Andrew Berry's been proactive, but I think you have people who are like, the franchise is cooked. And then you have people who are like, we're just fine, get healthy. And it's a lot closer in the middle than either of those two options, at least for me.
I think if you're on the franchise's coach train, then you need to go back to the top of the show when Jeff was talking about how there has been gradual, understanding of this team has only just begun to start to learn what winning is. And it's an actual group of guys that I think believe in everything that's here. In 2020, we had a lot of guys leave after that year, and a lot of different scenarios that impacted that. And I can tell you, I wanted to make this a longer point, but I'm just going to bring it up for myself. I continue to go to the Pro Football Reference and look at records by year. And I can tell you that this is the best year the Cleveland Browns have been in probably decades, literal decades. So if you think that we're on some brink of a collapse, you need to get yourself checked. You need to go back, just realize that this is reality and that everything's going to be okay. Jeff, he's made all the right points here. He's talked about the injuries. He's talked about the situations, and he's talked about the growth of this team. And so I think it's very important to just remember, just imagine the Ravens. I think the Ravens are the foregone conclusion right now that they're the favorites in the AFC, whatever may happen. They're healthy for once. They're all playing at a spectacular level, but this is a group of guys that have been there for the Ravens. And a couple guys have been added, of course. But for the majority of their team, this is a group that has been here for the last 3 to 4 years, just like how we built a team in the last 2 years, and we struggled with injuries. They struggled with injuries early, but still we're able to win games, make playoffs, and make a little bit of noise here and there. So I think we're heading in that direction, and I think it can only get better. I think Jeff and I are obviously going to talk and look, but I feel like we have cap space. Obviously, we don't have draft capital, but I think it's more important to get the vets in here than it is to draft rookies at this point. So obviously, if you get 1 or 2 starters from the draft, great, whatever. But there's a lot here that I think there's going to be to look forward to next year. And it's just, I get it. It's tough that 45-14 was the game yesterday, but
For sure.
There's going to be about 8 other teams, whatever, more or less, that lose and don't make it to the Super Bowl and have the same exact feelings as us where, yeah, disappointing end of the season, but there's a lot to look forward to with this team. So, Jeff, before we call it quits, do you have anything else to say?
Honestly, just to kind of wrap it up here, I mean, me and you probably know better than most people that success is not linear, something we've always talked about. So that's kind of my point of bringing up, like, hey, the strategy isn't, get healthy and hope we can make another run next year. Like, stuff has to be done. And I'm trying to keep it in the middle. I'm trying not to be like, oh, we'll be back, this, that, got Chubb healthy, Watson healthy, get tackles and then just go on with our life. I don't want to be that guy. And I don't want to be, the doomsday. Oh, if it goes south next year, the franchise is cooked, we don't have picks, we don't own this cap space. But I'm here for an argument for both. Like, if you come to me with stats and facts and figures, I'm willing to listen and kind of hear you out that, we have a lot of free agents to re-sign. What if Watson, can't get back to his Houston form or even what we saw in the Ravens game last year? I'm here to listen to that. Same way with, if we could get healthy, sure. Do I think we could win some football games? And we'll look at the schedule and everything like that. But it's not like we're still not, I think we took a huge step in the right direction in the regular season. We are still not like a franchise. Like, we're not there yet. Like, when you think of the franchises in the league, you think of the Baltimores, you think of the Kansas Cities,
Steelers.
I don't think we're not even, I don't want to say we're not close to that level, but we're not really close to that level as far as like all encompassing, are we competent every year? Are we in contention for the division? This is just 1 year. Can it continue? Absolutely. Do we have the building blocks to continue? 100%. But you have to be diligent in the offseason. You have to make sure that you're training these guys up. You have to make sure you're evolving as a coach. You have to make sure that whatever we're doing with the nutrition and the physical aspect of it, that we can stay healthy. Yeah. And then we'll just go from there. There'll be a lot to talk about, and we're not going to miss any of it.
Absolutely. And it's all about practicing greatness in everything that you do. I mean, just trying to keep everything in line with, the message that I think, even throughout, you go 0-1 yesterday, and guess what? Now you reset and you're 0-0 for however many weeks until the first playoff or the first regular season game of next year. And I think that's a mentality that, like, it's weird to say to take that into the off season, but at the same time, you're still thinking, hey, this is a team that wants to compete. They want to be out there. They don't want to be on their couches watching these games. They want to be out there playing them. I think a lot of those guys were severely disappointed in how this game went and how the season ended. I think they had a lot of belief in what this team was projecting and what this team was, looking to do. And I'm just here, same with Jeff. I'm going to be a little bit more on the optimistic side of things, of course, but I am here to just, really reel it in and kind of just see the facts as they are. I think a lot of them lean in our favor and whatnot, but like Jeff said, we'll be here to cover all of it. We'll be moving on in the future. I know I got a couple of things coming out this week, but there's going to be plenty of stuff to talk about this offseason, and we'll all have it here. So make sure you guys are liking and subscribing, hitting the bell notifications when those videos go out. Do stay tuned. We do have Cavs stuff coming up. And yeah, with that all being said, we'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.